War. War never changes.
Hi guys, welcome to my video. What you're seeing here is a table that I built for the game Fallout Wasteland Warfare a few years ago. The table was heavily inspired by the Fallout games, as well as a lot of the concept art around the Fallout franchise. I aim to capture that retro-futuristic look, along with the rust and urban decay you'd find in the game and the concept art. But there was always a finishing touch to this table that I never got around to doing. I was never able to add a red rocket petrol pump or gas pump. I left an empty space where the gas pump should be in front of the red rocket gas station, which has remained empty for a couple of years. So today I've decided to finally complete the table. I've printed out a gas pump, and now I'm going to show you how I painted it, weathered it, and added it to the table. Noticing that the base of the model was a little bit uneven, I start off by filing it down smooth. Once I was happy with that, I washed the model in warm soapy water in preparation for priming. I let it sit there for a few hours, and then scrubbed it down with an old toothbrush. This is to ensure that there's no oily residue left on the model that would prevent the primer from sticking. After giving the model a quick rinse, I let it dry. I then drilled a small hole at the bottom of the model where I would place a pin. The purpose of the pin is to attach the model to the table easily, and give me something to hold onto while painting. To attach the pin, I first cut the pin's head off using an end cutting nipper, and then fixed the pin into place using superglue. Next, using my trusty airbrush, I primed the model using an acrylic surface primer. Next, I gave the model a black undercoat, and then gave the model a coat of 3 parts Vallejo flat brown and 1 part Vallejo German grey. This is to give the model the appearance of rusted metal, which will be partially exposed from underneath a layer of chipped paint. Once that coat is dry, I apply a layer of matte varnish. The varnish will protect this current layer of paint when I apply chipping effects later in the process. I apply the varnish with an old rough brush. Allow the varnish to dry. Next, I coat the model in a layer of hairspray. This is one that I usually reserve for date nights. Allow this to dry. Next, I gave the model a coat of Vallejo Vermilion, a fancy name for red. Once this was dry, I got a jar of clean water and a rough, clean brush. I wet the brush and began scrubbing the surface of the model. The water activates the hairspray, and the scrubbing strips off small chips of the red paint, revealing the rust-colored paint underneath, and a realistic chipped paint pattern. The matte varnish we applied earlier protects the rust-colored paint underneath. I target the protruding areas and the edges. It's a little extreme for my liking, but as you can see, this has created a fairly realistic, chipped paint, weathered look. Next is time to paint the model details. I use German grey for the gas pump trim, and as the base coat for the gas pump mechanisms. Next I used oily steel for the gas pump handles. Then I used light sea grey and white grey for various components of the gas pump mechanism. I also used light green and oily steel for some of the buttons on the control panel. Next I gave the model a wash using Army Painter Strong Tone.
When the sergeant saw him, he said, "Oh, if you can sing this chorus, you can go."
Next I mixed pink with vermilion paint to create some highlights, focusing on raised areas and ridges that would reflect sunlight. Next it's time to add some extra weathering using pigment. To capture the look of a grimy mess inside the gas pump's mechanisms, I use black pigment, which I mix with pigment binder.
I'm thinking tonight of Dixie. That's where we first met.
I apply this pigment to the control panel, the price display, and the exposed gas pump machinery.
Yesterday, though it has been many a year, you were my sweetheart of the long ago.
With some of the excess pigment, I create oil streaks, running off the control panel and price display. For realism, I ensure that the streaks are as vertical as possible. Next, it's time to add some rust. I use rust pigment, pigment binder, and a small piece of sponge. I dip the sponge into the pigment and then dab the sponge onto the rusted areas of the gas pump. I made sure the sponge was rough to create a more natural look. Next I added some more streaks using Vallejo rust texture. Again, I always ensure that the streaks are as vertical as possible.
Through many, many years of toils and tears, you've been so true to me. My Dixie sweetheart.
I realized that the gas pump handles were looking a little bit too clean and shiny, so I decided to dab the handles with some rust pigment. Sorry about the blurriness, I'm new to this. So there we have it, the finished product. I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. It looks weathered, you can see the rust, you can see the grime on the control panel and the internal mechanisms. Now all that was left to do was to add it to the board and blend it in. Once I had measured and marked where I wanted to place the gas pump, I added some wood glue to the pin at the bottom of the model and simply pushed it into place. Beautiful. Next I added some oil around the base of the gas pump. Using Vallejo oil stains texture and a rough brush, I painted the oil stains around the base of the gas pump. I blended the edges of the oil stain into the concrete to give the appearance of seeping into the concrete over a very long period of time. I apply the same technique to the vacant slot where another gas pump once had been. Next it was time to add some grass tufts and some dead leaves. Using an old brush, I added blobs of PVA glue onto the ground around the gas pump. Then using a pair of tweezers, I added the leaves and tufts of grass. So there we have it. After a couple of years, my table is finally complete. I'm pretty happy with the way the gas pump looks, and I think it really brings the whole table together. I hope this has been instructive, and thank you for watching.